time to cancel the cabal with Stephen Roberts. On MSI Radio.
Welcome everybody on People's Internet Radio. Welcome everybody on CancelTheCabal.com, my live stream and my radio stream. I'm Stephen Roberts. This is Wednesday nights Cancel the Cabal on People's Internet Radio. I have a very, very high profile and special guest tonight. Just a little bit of his bio. I have Mark Passio up for tonight. Mark is an independent researcher, public speaker, radio talk show host, conference organizer, freedom activist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mark has undertaken the task of assembling vast amounts of research in areas of metaphysics, occultism, spirituality, symbology, and consciousness studies. In 2007, Mark began presenting this information in the Forum of Presentations series entitled What on Earth is Happening, with the intention of bringing the I'm not sure if I missed something there. With the intention of bringing the implications of his body of knowledge to greater public awareness. Mark launched his own website in 2008, whatonearthishappening.com. 2010, Mark began hosting his own weekly internet radio show, also called What on Earth is Happening, which continues today in the form of podcast on Mark's website. Mark is also one of the co-hosts of Free Your Mind, the Philadelphia-based conference on consciousness, mind control, the occult. Over the years, Mark has worked closely with activist groups in his area, such as the Tesla Science Foundation, Truth, Freedom, Prosperity, and Survive and Thrive, Philadelphia. Mark's latest endeavor is teaching an intensive seminar called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction, and how it applies, how to apply it in your life. Mark's websites are whatonearthishappening.com and freeyourmindconference.com. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Stephen, thank you so much for having me here today. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely great. Like I said, a high-profile guest. I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking like I told you before I took the air, but just a few questions. I got to get my microphone up a little bit. It's a little bit low. I can see that already. I didn't check my levels very well. Either that or I need to get up into it. But anyways, as I spoke to you about an hour and a half ago, we are all into living free, living without government intrusion, and living a more simpler life. One of your presentations, Natural Law, really piqued a lot of our interest, and I thought maybe we would like to speak on a lot of that tonight.
Sure, absolutely. It's the topic that I always prefer to really speak on and get the word out about as much as possible, because that is the answer to the question, why is humanity currently living in conditions that resemble slavery, that are slavery, really? And people often see the symptoms, they can see the manifested condition, and they can describe the problem pretty well, actually. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't go further than that and go down to the causal factors about why the problem has manifested itself. And these are factors that are in consciousness. They're not something that we're going to solve by rearranging things in the physical world. They're things that we have to change about ourselves. They're things that we have to change about what's taking place in our mind. And the way I've described the beginnings of how to understand natural law is when people say that they want certain conditions to be in place, like human beings will say they want freedom, they want health, they want peace, they want prosperity, etc., and so forth. And they'll say, we want all of these conditions to be present, not only just for ourselves, but for our species as a whole. In the aggregate, we want these conditions to be present. And, when you ask people, well, you want them to be present, aren't they already present in their fullness? The answer really is no. From a common sense perspective, no. Does humanity have a sense of total happiness, or are we in perfect health, or are we in a state of peace globally? Do we have freedom to the extent that we absolutely should have it? Is there prosperity on the earth and among its people to the extent that people want? No. Those conditions aren't present. They're not already in place. Okay? We are not happy as a species. We are not healthy as a species. We are not free as a species, etc., and so forth. So if you want those conditions to be present and they're not already present, that means that they don't just magically change. They don't just magically rearrange themselves and suddenly we have everything that we want. A lot of the New Age community wants to convince people that it works like that you just wish for it and then it magically appears somehow. But for the people who are actually logical and reasonable and who really approach this from a hands-on real-world perspective, there are requirements for obtaining the conditions that we say we want. Specific, very real requirements exist in order for human beings to obtain certain conditions that aren't currently present. I mean, this is just very simple common sense logic. So if we don't have the things we say that we want present, then it must be logical to conclude that the requirements have not been met. Right? I mean, that's just a simple logical conclusion. That means if there's requirements to obtaining these conditions and we don't have them now, obviously those requirements have not been met. Yes. It's a factor, it's a dual factor in my opinion. The two major things in human thought that bring forward the inaction for them to actually change the conditions is, one, they suffer from something called magical thinking, which is what I'm actually talking about here in the opening part of describing how natural law works. They believe that somehow alternative conditions that exist to the conditions that exist now can somehow just magically appear. This is, again, it's magical thinking taught by a lot of the New Age community and religion, that if we ask for something or pray for it or just wish it hard enough and feel it in our emotions, that somehow it magically manifests itself in the real physical world. And I'm here to attempt to burst people's bubble on this magical thinking, because in reality, things don't work like that, unfortunately. It would be nice if they did, but unfortunately, they do not work like that. That we need to actually change our thoughts and then change our behavior above all else. And then conditions will change. Until we change those things in ourselves, do not expect the external condition to change. And I would say the second factor is that we are, unfortunately, remain as a whole in a condition of ignorance with respect to those requirements that I'm speaking about. And there's a reason people are remaining ignorant. And notice I'm not using the word nescient. Okay, nescient means not knowing through no fault of your own because the information is not available to you to know. That's what nescience is. It's spelled Nescience. Look up that term for people who aren't familiar with it. Nescience is a connotation of not knowing. It means not knowing because available information was because information was not available or present at all. So therefore, because you didn't know through no fault of your own, because the information wasn't available. I'm talking about ignorance in contrast to nescience. Ignorance, or as I like to call it, ignorance, means that certain information is present and you are willfully choosing not to take it in or to disregard it. You are willfully ignoring its presence even though it is present. This is where humanity is at. We're in a state of ignorance with respect to the requirements for creating change. And there's a reason for that. The main reason for that is that humanity is stuck in a childlike mindset by which they do not want the personal responsibility that goes hand in hand with deep knowledge of the difference between right and wrong, natural law, with deep knowledge of the requirements for actually changing the current manifested conditions here on Earth. We don't want the responsibility because we want to believe it's not up to us to do those things. It's not up to us to create change. Again, this is more magical thinking. This is more New Age nonsense of, somebody's going to come here and rescue us from our own ignorance. They're going to come and save us. There's a savior waiting around every corner. It's just a matter of time before someone swoops down into Earth and rescues this ignorant species from its own willful ignoring of truth. Well, good luck with that thinking. It's called religion. It's called magical thinking. It's called utter illogical nonsense, ultimately. I mean, really, if truth be told, that's what it really is. This form of thinking is to continuously abdicate personal responsibility. You know, I heard, and I'm gonna actually call him out and say his name. John Lear. You know the guy who talks about consciousness change in the UFO community? John Lear came out, I heard him in interviews a couple of weeks back, saying, "We are not here to change the world. We are here to be changed by the world." Imagine this. That we're just here to let all this evil run amok, unchallenged. We're not here to actually make physical, real-world change on Earth. We're here to just let all this evil change our perspective and see the world differently, obtain a different perspective. But we're not actually here to create real-world physical change and stop this evil and stop this slavery. Imagine this. I mean, this is one of the most dangerous ideologies that could ever possibly be taught. One of the most dangerous things that you could ever possibly tell another human being is that you're not here to change this planet. All of us are here to change this planet. Every single one of us. Just some of us have remembered that mission a little bit more than others. Okay? That's what real spirituality is. That's what being a real spiritual warrior here on Earth is all about. We are here to change the conditions on this planet. Make no mistake about it. 100% absolutely. That is the case.
Yes.
Okay? So
Yes,
people teaching this New Age bunk, this nonsense, that we are not here to create real world change. It's just religion. This is the same nonsense religion teaches people. It's the same nonsense, people. You know, don't do anything. Wait for some hereafter. You're only here to change yourself. This is what this bunk, New Age garbage that's being put out there is about. And let me tell you something. That's participation with evil. Let me just say that out, write it out in the open, no apologies, straightforward. If you think like that, you are participating with the system of evil that exists here on Earth by saying it's not your responsibility to change it. Bull.
Absolutely.
Bull. And it needs to just be come out and said like that. We need to just start calling these people on their utter bull, their nonsense. This is nonsense. That's like saying, it's not our responsibility to stop the child pedophilia that's going on in the world. No, it isn't our responsibility to stop all the warmongering, all the deaths of innocent people. the rape of other countries' natural resources, the total corruption everywhere all around us in politics, banking, military, law, corporations. No, we're here to just let that run amok unchecked. Oh, we're here to get a different perspective as a result of it. Yes. Well, what's that perspective? That what? Evil reigns victorious? And there's not a damn thing we could do about it? That's the perspective we should have to be changed, in this world? Not here to change the world. You got to be joking.
Hey, Mark.
I mean, it really upsets me thinking that this is somebody people are listening to, and people think are somehow wise. Imagine this.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'm going to make a big deal about this going forward because it's a disgrace. It really is a disgrace. And, natural law isn't discussed or talked about, the objective difference between right and wrong by people like that. No, because we're just here to be changed by this world. We're not here to change it. Yeah, okay.
Yes, it is. There's a couple of nice little comments in the room here. One is from a listener. He says, Lear is from the CIA's Pacifica Radio. And the other one is Passio, Passio, and then there's a little space and it's got an N on the end, so passion.
I like that. That's what my name means in Italian. It means passion, or if you want to look at passion from a sense of deep emotional upwelling, that's one way to look at it. And passion can also mean suffering. My first name, Mark, in many different ancient languages actually means warrior. So if you put them together, my name actually means, my actual name, they say, what's in a name? Sometimes there's a lot in a name. My name actually means passionate warrior or suffering warrior, if you want to look at it from that perspective. So couldn't have named myself anything better if I were to give myself my own name. My parents happened to give me that name, but it tends to have worked out synchronistically, you might say. So there is a lot, and it can be a lot in a name at least.
Yes, there is, absolutely.
So to go back to this idea of what is natural law, to get to it, we have to understand that if we're going to change conditions here on the earth, and we are here to do that, then specific requirements exist to create those changes. Those changes don't just magically occur just because we want them to be that way. And see, in other words, what this is really saying here, Stephen, is we as human beings are not the arbiters of truth. There are ways to obtain certain conditions that we say we want. But if we are unwilling to take those actions and perform those necessary requirements, to put those requirements into place, the conditions will not just automatically change. We will receive the default or the entropic conditions, the disorderly conditions. See, in ancient occult schools of thought, they talked about two forces at work in nature. There's the entropic force, or what in occult terms was called involution, the force of involution, as opposed to the force which progresses consciousness, which is, of course, the evolutionary force. Involution means it's tightening up and rolling within. It's curling up within. Evolution literally means to unfold or to unfurl or to roll out, to expand something. So the involutionary force was the curling up and condensing of consciousness, okay? And the evolutionary force was the force that expanded or allowed consciousness to flower. And these are the two forces at work in the world, okay? So if we want to have conditions change, we have to align ourselves not with the force of involution, but with the force of evolution. We have to align ourselves with the natural law, the laws that actually act as the boundary conditions for creating change in the world. These are the real laws of attraction, not the New Age variant laws of attraction about what I have to focus on to get a better job or a better car or a nicer home or a better wardrobe. Okay, all egoic me factors. You know, it's all about service to self in the New Age variant of the law of attraction. The real law of attraction is natural law. It is about how do we align ourselves with the will of creation? How do we align ourselves with knowledge of the requirements for creating change? How do we align ourselves with the objective, natural difference the actual real world objective difference between right action versus wrong action. To definitively know that difference in every moment of our lives, and then willfully, by an act of our own will, choose the right over the wrong. This is what natural law is ultimately about. And I try to explain it to people as it is the most occulted or hidden knowledge on earth. And people hear the word occult, and sometimes they flinch. They get a little fearful. They get a little afraid or worried when you use the word occult. The word occult, ladies and gentlemen, comes from the Latin language. In ancient Latin, the verb occultare, O-C-C-U-L-T-A-R-E, means to hide or to conceal or to keep secret, to veil from sight, to hide from view. That's all it means, nothing else. The word occult simply means hidden. It is hidden knowledge. So then why would someone decide that they want to hide knowledge? Well, there's a very specific and deliberate reason. Occult knowledge, which is hidden from the masses of people and essentially kept, stored, and very tightly, kept, tight to the chest, closely guarded by people who are in the know, this tiny few so-called elite because they hold this knowledge. This differential in knowledge is there to create a differential in power. The occult, the people involved in the occult, hide the knowledge of what's going on in human consciousness, and they hide the knowledge of natural law because they are deliberately attempting to create and maintain a power differential between those who hold that information and are knowledgeable of it, and those who are ignorant and don't have that information, who remain ignorant of it, and as a result remain powerless to create change in the world and in their lives. That's what the occult is. It has never been anything other than that. Okay? It is hidden knowledge, and it comprises two main bodies of knowledge. People will say, well, what knowledge is this? Again, it's two main bodies of knowledge. The first is the knowledge of the microcosmic world of consciousness. Okay? So you might call that the inner world, the world of the psyche, the world of human consciousness. Okay? The world of our deep-seated motivations, our desires, how we function mentally, psychologically, emotionally, etc. So it's knowledge about the self. That's all the first part of occultism is knowledge about the self, the individual. And then there's a second body of knowledge. It's been called the macrocosmic knowledge. It's been called knowledge of the greater world, natural law knowledge, okay, the natural sciences. It's the knowledge of how the universe functions, the physical laws of the universe, and then the unseen occulted laws of the universe that govern behavior. Because if you think behavior is the only thing in the universe that is exempt from law, all matter follows law. Okay? The movements of galaxies, stellar nebulae, stars, planets, weather systems on planets, okay? You name any part of nature, okay? It is governed by some function within nature's law. And then people will say, well, everything in nature works like that. Everything in the whole natural physical world works like that. It's all governed by law. We just have to observe and understand what those laws are. Gravity, electromagnetism, electricity, etc. And then suddenly they'll tell you in the same breath or in the next breath, human behavior isn't governed by any law. We could do whatever we want, essentially, as long as we can get away with it. No, there's no repercussions to what we do. There's no actual law that governs a human being's behavioral choices. No. Everything else in the extant universe is governed by law except human behavior. Sure. Sure it is. And it's absolutely fallacious thinking. It's folly. It's actually lunacy, really is what it is. It's mental illness, if you really want to get down to it. Because imagine the amount of imbalance and hubris that needs to be inside of a human mind, within the human psyche and in the human heart, the level of imbalance and hubris to think every other thing in the whole universe is governed by law except mankind. Yeah. Imagine that.
Say, Mark, a lot of people don't even realize that how much our emotions and our actions and our interactions can cause can not really cause, but make a difference in somebody else. You know, someone can walk into a room with just the brightest smile on their face,
Yep.
and somebody will smile back at them and be in a better mood. Or
Sure.
somebody can walk into a room with an angered presence, and it will affect someone else.
Sure. And this is also why people have to be very cautious for falling prey to emotional mind control, as I call it. You know, when somebody's trying to tell someone an uncomfortable truth because they're in a very, very precarious situation, altogether in a very precarious situation, the new age approach, or the 6 o'clock newscaster approach of, you know, putting on the sweet, pleasing tones isn't always the right way to go about it. Sometimes it's to just look in the other person's eyes and look at them as a human being that is capable of handling the truth, even though the truth is dark. Where we're at right now, ladies and gentlemen, is a dark place. I liken it to, imagine if a house was burning down, because that's what's happening. Our house is burning down. In case you don't recognize that, that's actually the scenario that's taking place. The house is burning down right now. We're in a burning house. And in a position where a house was burning down, let's say there was a mother, a father, and 2 children living in the house. Should the mother and father, as the adults of that house, start cooking dinner?
Not hardly.
Should they turn on the TV and kick their feet up in the living room
No, I
and
wouldn't
say,
think.
let's relax?
Yeah.
Our kids are upstairs. The whole first floor is starting to burn. But let's pop in a DVD. Let's entertain ourselves.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, this is our condition. And what people want to hear is, they want to hear the soft, pleasing tones of someone who's just trying to keep them distracted. This is emotional mind control. That's why so many people are more apt to listen to a newscaster sweet talk them, even though they're telling them utter nonsense and lies. You know, if someone is screaming at you from 4 inches away from your face with a bullhorn, the only thing that matters, ladies and gentlemen, is, are they telling you the truth? Nothing else matters. See, this is one of the things I want to attempt to utterly annihilate and destroy in the New Age community. The way a message is delivered is utterly and completely meaningless,
Are you?
as long as it's the truth.
Yeah. Are
The
you
only thing that matters, nothing else matters about how a message is delivered. Okay? I try to be as logical as possible. I try to explain things in as depth of clarity as I'm capable of doing. That's my presentation style, and it can also come off with some abrasiveness and harsh emotion because, let's face it, I don't look at it like I should have to do this. I think that this should be common sense knowledge, personally. To me, this knowledge is not deeply held back from people. It's all there. It's all always been there. It's all out in the open. The problem is people don't want it. They want to remain in their little illusory box, thinking that they're free as long as they have their little box called the house, and then they have their animal trough feed within the house, and they have their little entertainment center within the house, and then they have their mobile box that can get them to their slave job, that can get them to maintain that whole prison system that they're locked in. As long as they're in that little comfort level, they don't want to know anything about how they're enslaved. They don't want to know anything about how this world really works. They don't want to know anything about their complicity with evil. They don't want to know anything about the depth of evil that has surrounded us in this world. Okay? And they want to just go throughout the world in total illusion, believing that they're somehow free, when in fact they're slaves in a cage. That's the actual real world condition of humanity. And not only is it the real world condition, it's always been the human condition. And you know what? It's wrong. And that's all anybody needs to know about it. The condition by which human beings live is morally wrong.
Yes, it is.
Morally wrong. And that's the only thing anybody has to come to the conclusion of. That is what awakening means. People say, well, what's awakening spiritually? It's awakening to the recognition of the condition of human slavery and its wrongness. That's what real spiritual awakening is, folks. And if you haven't done that, if you haven't actually awoken to that level of consciousness, you're still asleep. You're unconscious. Totally unconscious.
Yes, it
You
is.
know?
Absolutely.
And the New Age is propagating this nonsense that that's not what awakening is. That somehow it's like meditating your way into some kind of a state of ignorant bliss. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Certainly it is, Mark. I've had occupations or jobs, whatever you want to call them, careers where I made between $75,000 and $80,000, and I was unhappy, didn't want to do them. And I've been on disability for 11 years. I get $19,000 a year, and I couldn't be more happier about it. But I have a question.
Sure.
Are you calling out New Agers? People like...
I've always been calling out New Age people since day one, since I began my work. I attacked the New Age on day one when I started speaking publicly, because it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a fake pseudo-spiritual religion. I call it the catch-all religion. The New Cage movement, as Cameron Day coined it, and other researchers. But that's exactly what it is. The New Cage movement. You know, it's this catch-all. See, for whoever doesn't get caught by all the cultural religions, you know, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Shintoism, etc., and so forth, and all the other alternative religions, we have the New Age net. We have the New Cage movement waiting down here to catch those who have sifted through that prison system of the mind, of the psyche, called religion, called world cultural religions. Now we have a worldwide movement, this alternative religious community, that, you know, all the people who stop believing in the nonsense of traditional cultural religion, now they're all being sifted down into the new net, or as I like to call it, the New Cage. You know, that's all it is. It's another religion. Its purpose is the same thing, to get people to stand down from taking real world action to change this place. That's all religion is designed for. You have the left-brained religions of government or authority and scientism, not real science, but government-funded, grant-paid, grant-funded science. Okay, government grant-funded paradigm protection, as I like to call it. Has nothing to do with real science. I call those scientists the paradigm protectors. They're there to tell the public, this is what's true, and this is what's possible. And you don't look outside that cage. You don't look outside that box. We told you anything outside that box is off limits. So you have to listen to us because we're the priests in the white lab coats. You know? We'll tell you all about what's possible. And it's a religion, just like the belief in authority is a religion. And that's the left brain world. And that's the left brain world that is designed to put us in a prison cell. And then you have the right brain religion that's there to keep us there. They're all the right brain forms of religion, plus the New Age movement. It's there to keep us in that state of inaction. Once you're put in that cell, now you have to be convinced you should never take any active, actual action to change the current state of existence. You should just stand down and remain inactive and stay right where you're at, because somehow that's how it should be. You know, this idea that evil is necessary, that it has to be there to keep balance. Utter nonsense. Evil is a form of extremity. It has nothing to do with balance whatsoever. And we are allowing this extremity that is the complete, you know, antithesis of anything that is balanced or good to remain that way, because we're infected by this religious mindset. Religion and the New Age movement, which is all about standing down. Don't take any action, stand down. The destruction of the masculine force. While government, authority, and scientism often is about the complete destruction of the sacred feminine force of care, you know, and actually having common sense, right-brained intelligence combined with intellect. You know, that's, people think, it's another thing. I hear people talking about IQ tests as some measure of intelligence. You know, just because the name is intelligence quotient, they call it that. Has nothing to do whatsoever with intelligence. Absolutely zero, goose egg. Nothing whatsoever to do with real intelligence. It's an intellect quotient. You could use IQ in that sense. It is a measure of how left-brain intellect how much activity is present in the left brain intellect, but the intellect is not the totality of intelligence. The right brain, generative, which is where we get the word intelligence, the generative or creative or nurturing intelligence as part of the right mind, okay, that's not present in just pure intellect. When we bring those together, that's when we have real intelligence. We have intellect plus the generative principle of care. Okay, now we have real holistic intelligence when we bring those together. But just having intellect has nothing to do with real intelligence. You know, this is pure left brain imbalance.
Sure. Hey, Mark.
So, yeah.
Why do you think people like police officers? I want to tell you a little story after this too, when I can catch a little break too. But why do you think police officers, people that are in public office, is it conditioning? Is it brainwashing, or is it something wrong with their brain that they actually feel and think that they have power over people?
All of the above, plus other factors. Conditioning plays a huge role in it. These people are members of a cult. C-U-L-T. Cult. That's what the military and the police are. I did podcasts on previous What on Earth is Happening shows where I broke down all of the classical techniques of cults from the ancient world all the way through to the modern day. And then I compared them one technique at a time to the police and the military system of indoctrination and brainwashing. And they are identical. Identical. Okay, I can't give you the numbers of the podcast offhand, but just go in my podcast section on whatonearthishappening.com. Do a find on page. If you know how to do that in your web browser, just do find on page and then type in techniques of cults and listen to those podcasts. Every single solitary technique that cults have used to indoctrinate and brainwash their membership throughout the ages, again, from ancient time period in human history, right up to the present moment, those techniques are, to the letter, identical for what police and military are put through during their training. Identical. That's only part of it, though. Okay? The other part of it is, you said, is there something wrong with their brain? And the answer is yes. They are literally, physically brain damaged. And I'm not saying that to be funny, to make a joke. It's not a joke. It's very, very, very serious. I'm not insulting anybody by saying that. I'm not attempting to throw that out there as an insult. I'm telling you about a real, actual, real-world, scientifically provable condition that exists within the framework of their brain. The actual electrochemical structure of their brain is not functioning properly in people who are involved in control-based institutions. They have literal brain imbalance to the point of brain damage. See, what happens in the human brain physiology is if one type of thinking is chronically engaged in, let's say you're only engaged in intellectual thinking, only in left brain thinking, this will actually imbalance over a long, long period of time, usually years of time. It will imbalance the neocortex, which is the higher functioning brain. Okay, the brain that actually, it's the higher brain. We have really three brain complexes in the human brain. The reptile complex, or the R complex, the reptilian brain, that's the base brain. It's the brainstem and the cerebellum. It governs motor skills and fight or flight modalities. Okay, so instinct, survival, motor skills, things like that. Real physical interactions. Then we have above that the mammalian brain. It's called the limbic system, and this makes possible our emotions. Okay, the limbic system actually generates the chemicals that go into the bloodstream and allow a human being to feel the repercussions of what they do to someone else. Now, when I explain to you what kind of imbalance dominators have, or people in the police and military, you'll understand how their brain is actually damaged. Literally, not figuratively. I'm not using that term metaphorically, brain damage. I'm saying literal brain damage, so that we're clear. Okay, I don't know how much clearer I can make that, but it's actual, provable, scientifically provable physical damage to the brain. Okay, so the midbrain governs emotions and our emotional makeup. The higher brain, the neocortex, sits on top of both of these complexes, and it's bilaterally symmetrical. We have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere to the neocortical brain. Really, this part of the brain is called the telencephalon, but the outer covering is where a lot of the neural synaptic activity takes place. That's the highest functioning part of the brain, and that's called the neocortex. So the cortical brain is the human brain. It's what makes us human. The left brain functions are logic and analytical thought and scientific and mathematical thought. And then the right brain functions are creativity, nurturing, care, anything that is non-linear, okay? Anything that is holistically based. That's all right brain functions. It makes possible. And the creative aspect of ourselves, the generative part of the human personality. And again, caring and nurturing, the feminine principles. So we need to have all these combined, the left and the right functions, to be a holistic, intelligent human being. Most people are in one form of brain imbalance or another. Now, when you're in left brain imbalance, the whole neocortex malfunctions electrochemically. It doesn't operate as its intended function to be the executive function, executive command center of the human brain. It malfunctions overall, and then executive command, if you're in left brain chronic imbalance, gets shunted to the R complex, the reptile brain. And the limbic brain largely malfunctions, and it doesn't work to its extent that it should be to help us to feel emotions in the physiology. So that's why dominators, male dominators, and I'm not talking just male, okay? Anybody who's in masculine domination and thinks they're in control of other human beings, okay? That could be a male or a female. They have left brain chronic imbalance that has essentially numbed out the functions of the limbic brain, and the executive command is actually being routed to the R complex of the brain, which is all about fight or flight response, pure instinct, pure survival, control, etc. Now, if the opposite form of imbalance takes place, right brain imbalance, now you have the opposite taking place. While, yes, the neocortical brain, okay, the higher human brain, it malfunctions and no longer acts as the executive command center of the brain, the exact opposite happens. The instinct and survival mechanisms of the human being get diminished because the R complex isn't working as it should, and then executive command function gets rerouted, or it gets shunted to the limbic brain, which is the part that governs emotions, and then the being becomes out of control as far as emotions are concerned, or feel an overabundance of emotions, and they don't really think logically or clearly, and they're ruled by their emotions. And then they start engaging in magical thinking. If I just feel that it's going to be this way, it's going to be this way. This is religious and magical thinking. So it's all explained by brain balance versus brain imbalance. And police and military, these are people who are chronically in left brain imbalance, and it has resulted in literal damage to the midbrain, the limbic system. The emotional center of the brain is not functioning as it should, nor is the neocortical brain functioning as it should. So don't expect higher order thought, don't expect conscience, don't expect empathy, don't expect creative thinking. Don't expect any respect for the nurturing of human beings. Don't expect any, care, true care. It's all cold-bloodedness. That person's being ruled by the reptile complex of the brain. They, for all intents and purposes, have become a reptile or a robot, however you want to look at it.
Yes.
Or an automaton.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference how you want to look at it. The product of behavior is the same. And I would say a third factor. So now we've looked at brainwashing, okay, for lack of any better term, mind control, all right? We've looked at physical damage to their brain, and also, let me say this, that happens through diet as well. You could damage the brain through what you put into the body. The brain is made of what we take into our body through food and water, okay? Food and drink, period. We literally are what we eat. You feed the body garbage, the mind is going to become garbage. You feed the body quality, the mind is going to become quality. Okay, and these people basically have some of the most atrocious diets you could ever possibly imagine. Not only that, their stress factors off the chain. Okay, they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. taking orders, which is immoral on its face. Doesn't make a difference whether you think those orders are moral or not. Irrelevant. Order following in and of itself intrinsically is evil. Period. And until people start recognizing that, we're not going to make any progress as a species. If you follow orders of another human being, you are immoral. The end. The end. Because it is the antithesis of actually exercising conscience, which is when you know the difference between right and wrong, and then you willfully choose your own behavior. You don't say, I'm going to abdicate that choice to someone else and they're going to tell me how to act. No, that's always evil. I don't care if that person gave you the most moral order in the world. You still engaged in an act of evil by following it. Even if the order was moral, you engaged in an act of evil. Because what you did was you tossed away the greatest gift that the Creator has ever given to any being, and that's called free will.
Your own
You
thoughts.
tossed away free will.
Your own thoughts, yes.
Yeah. And the third factor here, aside from the physical damage of the brain and mind control, is these people have deeply seated psychological abandonment issues. Let me just state that emphatically. Absolutely. These people, if you were to take them to a psychologist, a good one who really understands the mind, not some quack, okay, and you were to have them psychoanalyzed, okay, these people have deeply seated psychological parental abandonment issues going on in the subconscious mind, whether they're aware of it or not, okay? What I'm saying here is these are the kind of people whose mommy and daddy didn't pay enough attention to them, and they never worked that out. They never got over it, folks. In some form or fashion, whether it was physically abandoned, emotionally abandoned, psychologically abandoned, spiritually abandoned. It doesn't make a difference how they were abandoned. It doesn't mean that the parent has to be gone or had to be having, extramarital affairs or whatever, okay? I'm not saying they had to physically not be present. Parents can be present and still be abandoning their children, okay? These are abandoned children mentally, psychologically. Abandoned children. And they're taking out all their frustrations for mommy and daddy not having paid enough attention to me or not having given me the care that I needed or required when I was an infant, when I was a baby, when I was a toddler, when I was, a small child, when I was a teenager, and then after that, even when I grew up or allegedly grew up, okay? These are people who never grew up. They're still emotionally, psychologically abandoned children in their mindset, in their actual psychological framework, okay? And nobody calls anybody on this. Nobody ever talks about this. They don't try to get down to the causal factors. No, they're just looking at the symptoms. They're not asking why. So that's a profound question that you just laid out there. And those are the three things that really we have to start to look at of why these people behave the way they behave. One, their brains are literally physically screwed up. Literally. Okay? Number one. Two, they have these deep-seated psychological abandonment issues that they've never dealt with, they've never confronted, okay, that are running like a program in the subconscious mind. And then three, now you add years of state-sponsored indoctrination and brainwashing to the mix, and then you put them through trauma-based abuses in their boot camp and in their, initiation regiments, okay? And what do you have? You have a further breakdown of the mind, a further compartmentalization, a further traumatizing that they've already experienced through things that went on in their home life and things that went on through them traumatizing themselves through the junk they're feeding their body, which is eventually building the brain in the horrific state that it's in. So, what do you expect? That's my answer is, what else would you expect that being to become except some kind of a troglodyte troll, absolute golem? A golem is what these people are. They're golems.
Yes, they are. And a lot of these people you're referring to, Mark, they cannot handle any criticism either.
Oh,
whether it's narcissism or just constructive criticism, they just.
If they refuse to start attempting to heal themselves, what needs to be done is they need to be further abandoned by their families. Yeah. See, this is what I tell people. You want to put a dent in what's going on in the world? Women, divorce your cop husbands. You want to put a dent? That'll put a dent in it. Children, tell your parents who are cops, I disown you as a parent and I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
I want absolutely zero to do with you ever again in my life. Have nothing whatsoever to do with that person for as long as your natural life, the duration of their natural lives.
Yeah.
Say, if you're going to do this immoral behavior, if you're going to destroy the freedom of the people of this country, if you're going to destroy my freedom and the freedom of my children and coming generations, well, then you have to do it on your own. You have to do it on your own.
Yes, you do.
Not with my support, not with my blessing, not with my looking at you and saying I'm proud of you for what you just did today, you know, taking away human freedom, you know, because that's where we're at. If people don't recognize that's what these institutions do, you know, I'm not here to even try to convince anybody of that. You can't see that with your own eyes by this point. I mean, the word moron doesn't sum it up.
No,
it just doesn't do enough. It doesn't convey enough. It's beyond brainwashing. It's a willful desire to remain a slave because you fear freedom. You fear being actually free and knowledgeable because that takes on responsibility. You take on responsibility in that state, you know, of full knowledge of what's really going on.
Oh, yes.
You know, then you have full responsibility to do something about it, to speak out.
Yeah.
I tell people, you want to do one thing, that'll start getting the message through these people, tell them, I'm not your family anymore. You're a stranger to me. Okay? You're not only a stranger to me, you're my enemy. And this is divisiveness. This is an actual duality that exists in humanity. These people believe they're masters. They believe that they own other people. They believe that they have more rights than others. And they are wrong.
Yes.
Both factually and morally.
Yeah.
For taking that position. And they need to be told such right to their faces. Not apologizing, not saying, it's not your fault. No, you have free will.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Yes, I thought
you have free will whether to engage in in an immoral behavior or not. And they're willfully choosing to do this, and many of them love it. They love it because they're so gone. Their heart is so gone. Yeah. Their mind is so gone that for all intents and purposes, you could call them possessed.
Yeah.
They're owned by something else. They're so owned by the egoic force. That is this force that will not allow someone to see that they're wrong. That will not allow to help them to see that they're engaged in evil. Okay? They're so in that force. They're so locked in that trance, calcified in that deep ego. I'm telling you, for people to support them is participating in their evil. You need to tell them, I'm giving you an option, like an intervention, like you would for a drug addict that you cared about. Okay? You need to say, you're going to stop doing this, or I'm not going to be around here anymore to witness it happen.
Yeah.
That's what we need. We need interventionist policy when it comes to the actions of police and military. Stop telling them you support them. You shouldn't be supporting them. If you tell these people you are supporting them, you are supporting evil. You are supporting evil. You need to tell them you don't support what they do. That you will not continue to support them, and that you will not even be their family member unless they reverse their behavior, start caring enough about themselves to become balanced in the mind again, and then reverse their immoral behavior. Then you could take them back into your fold and treat them as a normal human being, normally functioning human again, because they become something that is less than human. And no, that is not a demoralizing or dehumanizing statement. It's the truth. A human being is someone who acts with respect to other beings around them because they have care operating inside of them. Conscience, it's called. The knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong, which is what natural law is all about. That's what it means to understand natural law, to have conscience, okay? To come into the understanding of natural law means you have come into the understanding that there is an objective standard between right behavior and wrong behavior. And then exercising or acting in harmony with natural law is exercising conscience. That means once you understand the difference between right and wrong behavior, you're willfully choosing the right behavior over the wrong behavior. Willfully, in full knowledge. Through knowledge, you're doing that. Because you know the difference, now you can make an active, willful decision to say, I'm going to choose the right behavior instead of the wrong behavior. So what I'm saying here, folks, is the reason our condition on earth doesn't change is because, as strange as it even sounds to leave the lips of a human being, humanity does not truly know the difference between right and wrong. That is why we're in the prison that we're in. And even if those who do know the difference, they are willfully choosing wrong over right, even if they claim to know the difference. So you can claim to know the difference all you want. You know, you ask these cops, you ask their family, do you know the difference between right and wrong? So many of them will tell you that they do. And then in the next breath, they'll tell you slavery is legitimate because government is legitimate.
Yeah. Exactly.
Taxation is absolutely moral.
Yeah.
You know, prohibition is absolutely moral.
Because
licensing is absolutely moral.
Because
they'll try to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Government's monopoly on violence is absolutely legitimate. Oh yeah, don't you know that? And I know the difference between right and wrong.
It's not wrong if the government does it, though, Mark. Yeah.
They're magically exempt from the laws of right and wrong, Stephen. Don't you know that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The radio chat room is going absolutely nuts. I can't even keep up with it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I know.
If I'm not upsetting people, I'm not doing my job. And I'm completely finished moving forward, sugarcoating this.
Yeah.
100% completely finished. Not going to sugarcoat it anymore. As if I ever did. I never really did. But I'm going to be coming out more and more hardcore and recommending an approach for people to deal with this problem. And my approach lies largely with the actions that women can take. Because let's face it, the dominator world is largely made of males. Physical males, the sex males, not masculine energy. I'm talking about actual men, okay? They're not real men. They're little boys who think that they're men,
right?
Okay, but they're the male sex, okay? And who has the most influence over members of the male sex, members of the female sex?
Females, yep.
Their wives, their mothers, their daughters.
That's
who they're going to be more apt to listen to the influence of. And until those people really deeply understand the difference between right and wrong and recognize that in supporting these males and their family and doing what they've been doing, they have been condoning and supporting evil. Evil. So they need to step it up and start the non-support of dominators by getting in the face of the men in their lives and saying, unless you stop doing this, I will not be here anymore. I will not be with you or around you. And see, you know, this is what it comes down to, Stephen. People talk about this awakening that's going on. There's no awakening going on. There is. It's a tiny, 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 tiny fraction.
It is.
An insignificant little paltry amount of people who have awoken.
Yeah.
It's so insignificant. If I had to guess at the number, it's far less than 1% of the human population.
Oh, yes.
Far, far less.
Probably 1/10 of 1%.
I would say that's probably an accurate estimate.
Yeah.
It's probably a fair estimate. If 1/10 of 1% of the human population is really awake, it'd be generous. It would be generous numbers.
It would.
Okay? Now, and this is, people always ask me, what would you say? When would you say a real mass awakening is happening in the human population? When would you say, okay, folks, it's on. The mass awakening is underway. It is present. It is happening. We are in critical mass juncture, and it's happening. The world is actually waking up and changing.
When they have about 3 million people show up for a 2016 election.
I would say that's probably not my way. I would, but it might be one way.
Yeah.
But my ultimate way of determining this factor is when so few people are willing to do the job of police and military, okay, the strong arm of the dark occultists, okay, the order followers of the financial elitists of the world, because that's what they are. Let's face it, that's what they are. Okay? They're not protectors. They're not people who serve. Okay? This is all bunk rhetoric.
It is.
All right? These are the paradigm protectors, and they're the physical strong arm men of the financial elitists and the dark occultists that even lie behind them.
The goons of the corporation. Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
The mindless robot army, the wind-up dolls, you know, the toy soldier wind-up dolls. Now, I will tell you a mass awakening is occurring when so few people are doing that job that the mainstream media has to say, we are in a worldwide crisis because we cannot find anyone who is willing to go into the institutions of military and police. That is the day I will tell you publicly on the air, ladies and gentlemen, a mass awakening is taking place in our species. Now, you think, how far are we away from that day? That's how far we are from really awakening, ladies and gentlemen.
It might not be in my lifetime, and I'll be 50 in just a couple of weeks. But anyways, do you talk to police stations and police institutions?
I would love to. I would add, and I'd tell them the exact same things I've told you here today, just like I did here today, with no difference. But you think these people are willing to listen to another human being? They're not willing to listen to another human being. Their whole job is not listening to people. It's just acting by rote, by a program that's running, by procedure. They never listen to anybody. They don't have the capacity to listen to anyone. That capacity is broken in their brain.
Unless they have a shinier uniform than what they have on, or maybe they're on a TV screen, Mark.
And you know who let that happen? We did.
Us.
We let this occur, ladies and gentlemen, by not morally educating our young. When the young aren't morally educated and their brain isn't built well through good food and good information, okay, which is called parenting. You might have heard of it. You might have heard of it.
It is.
That's called parenting. Okay? We're not doing that.
It's called sacrificing too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's called saying, well, now that I've brought another life into this world and I am their steward, I am their protector, I am the one who has to build them up. Maybe I can't do all the things I wanted to do with my life from this point forward. And maybe, God forbid, I have to spend some time and attention with my child.
Yeah. You're not raising children, Mark. We're raising adults.
Yeah. Because they were never raised as children. Because parents didn't do their job. Exactly. And now that's thrown on, that responsibility has been thrown on to the people who actually have grown up and have come out of the state of childhood.
Yes, there is.
Now, instead of having one or two children, which I never did have any physical children in this lifetime, and I'm probably never going to, because I don't want to bring any children into a prison.
I don't want to either.
You know, now I'm attempting to raise millions of grown children that are physically adult, but in their psychological and emotional and spiritual makeup are infants.
Hey, Mark.
Infants.
Yeah, Mark. Do you know that there is there actually is no psychological term for arrested development? That was just the term coined by the TV show. Sure. I've talked to a psychiatrist. There actually is no term for it. It actually is a affliction or a disease, if you want to call it, but there is no term for it.
I have a term for it. Let's just call it golemization.
Stupidity, maybe? Yeah.
Turned into a golem. Turned into a mindless, animated piece of clay that resembles a human being but isn't one. You know? Golem. Yeah. It's as good of a term as any.
Sure. I thought I was...
They have a name. The dark occultists have a name for it. They call people the dead.
The dead?
The dead is their name.
Walking dead, yeah.
They literally call people the dead. That's their name for human beings that are completely unconscious. The dead is their name for them, because this is their rationale. See, their rationale as the social engineers and the control class, okay, is if somebody else is so ignorant that they don't know the first thing about the first thing, they haven't used their intellect, they haven't used their creative intelligence, they have no real intelligence as a whole, no holistic intelligence, and therefore they are not operating in any kind of knowledge. All right? And secondarily, they don't have their emotions. Their emotions aren't fully developed and born. They don't care. They're apathetic, right? So they're ignorant and they're apathetic. Those are two of the three expressions for consciousness. Thoughts and emotions. Now, what's the third? Action. And they don't do anything. They're lazy. They're cowardly. They don't actually do anything to create real world change. No, they just accept the conditions as they are and say, oh, there's nothing I could do about it. What can I do to make anything change? So if they're ignorant, apathetic, lazy cowards, by all intents and purposes, this is how the dark occultist rationale for this works, they are not really alive because they don't have consciousness. They are completely unconscious, and they're in a permanent state of unconsciousness. Well, what's a permanent state of unconsciousness called? Death.
Yeah. Well,
they're in spiritual death.
Yeah.
And that's why they call them the dead. And their rationale extends and works like this in their own way of looking at their own behavior, the dark occultist behavior. They say, if we do something to something that's dead, what's wrong with that? Is that an immoral thing?
That's how they substantiate.
It's just an inanimate piece of matter that's just laying there.
It's like
not really alive.
Yeah. It's like kicking a dead
they
horse.
call people the dead, and they excuse all of the things that they do to further beat us down, to further trounce all over our rights, etc. And they excuse it by saying, well, that's all done to something that's not truly alive.
That's right.
Therefore, what karmic consequence or debt am I going to take by doing this action to a dead thing?
Yeah.
It's just a dead lump of flesh that is just, somehow animated by rote, and whatever I do to it, oh well. Yeah. I have the right to do that because it's an inanimate piece of matter.
Exactly.
And you know what? As dark and sick as that is, I can understand at least their rationale. I'm not telling you I agree with it, but I can understand how they, in their twisted mental state, started thinking of that, started thinking that way.
At the end
because
of the
day, that's their worldview when it comes to humanity. And I can't tell you that my overall worldview when it comes to ignorant human beings is like drastically different in so far as how they should be treated. I don't think they should be treated like that. But I agree with their perspective that that person is dead.
Sure.
They are dead. They are spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically dead for all intents and purposes. Where I disagree with the dark occultist is what should be done about that condition. Should that be perpetuated and they just be let go? No, I think they should be built up by an act of the will of the conscious, which means sacrifice is going to be necessary. That's what the great work is, ladies and gentlemen. The great work is you have to take the message of truth to the people who have been ignoring it until they start to listen to it. Now think about how hard that is. Are we successful? Have we been successful so far? No, we haven't. You want to know why? Too many people think the way the dark occultists do. That's their own problem. It's not my problem to morally educate these people. Yes, it is. It's not only your problem, it's your responsibility as well. It is our responsibility, if we have the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong, to morally educate other people by speaking that knowledge at all times and at all places like a never-ending chorus until people start catching on and singing the same song. It doesn't mean everybody needs to be the same, folks. That's not what I'm saying, so don't get it twisted. Okay? It's about everybody being on the same page when it comes to common sense knowledge of natural law. The difference between right and wrong. Conscience. That's the common ground. That's what conscience means. Common sense. Con in Latin is a prefix that means, when you tack it onto any word root, it means with or together. Together. With. Shared. Common to. Okay? And then you have the word science in the word conscience, conscience. Science comes from the Latin verb sciere. Sciere means to know or to understand. So literally conscience, it means literally common sense, to know together the difference between right and wrong. That's what we have to all be the same on. That's why we're in the situation that we're in now, because too many people don't have the knowledge of right and wrong, which is what conscience is. Conscience is knowledge. It is not action. the exercise of conscience, putting that knowledge into practice in our lives by willfully choosing right action over wrong action is the exercise of conscience. That is action. So, this is what natural law is all about. It is all about conscience. It is all about willfully choosing right over wrong. It is about the objective difference between right and wrong. And these are the laws that are the boundary conditions that govern what happens, whether we are, as a society, in a state of conscience and exercising that conscience, or as a society, whether we are not in conscience and we are willfully ignoring conscience.
Sure.
That's what natural law is. It's the universal spiritual laws that govern the consequences of behavior, that operate through free will choice. Through our free will, choose whether we're going to act in right action or wrong action. And then as a society does that, that aggregate behavior, is building up in the aggregate. And now the whole society is generally behaving a certain way. Well, is it moral or is it immoral? And that's what's going to determine whether a society is free or enslaved. It's called the law of freedom, probably one of the most important natural laws that exist in nature. And again, this isn't man's law, folks. Just to clarify, natural law isn't written down. It's nature's law, God's law, the Creator's law, the law of the universe, the law of conscience, the law of morality, the law of common sense. Okay, that's what I'm talking about when I say natural law. Has nothing to do with the Darwinian, system of so-called natural order. Okay, has nothing to do with nature, and it has nothing to do with order. That's that's controlled chaos, actually. This whole Darwinian paradigm of moral relativism and a dog-eat-dog worldview, has nothing to do with natural law whatsoever. These are the laws that govern conscience. They interoperate with free will. So our free will is at work as well. It doesn't mean that everything is just deterministic. There's a deterministic component, which are the boundary conditions of behavior, which is natural law. And then those laws interoperate with the random set of circumstances in the universe called free will, choice, that we are gifted with, whether to live in harmony with natural law or disobey it and live in disharmony with it. So, the law of freedom is real simple. As morality in a society increases and most of its people become moral beings, that society becomes more and more free.
Yes, it is.
As morality increases, freedom increases.
Yes, it is.
And then conversely, as morality in any given society in the aggregate declines, the freedom of that society declines, and they go deeper and deeper into bondage and slavery. That's how natural law works.
Absolutely.
The result that we get when we live in accordance with natural law is human beings become and remain free, and their society exists in a state of order. And conversely, when human beings live in opposition to natural law, and they're therefore immoral beings, they become and remain enslaved, and their society exists in a state of chaos and disorder.
Yes, because absolutely, at the end of the day, Mark, they know they have to have our consent.
Sure.
And we have been giving it to them for over 150 years now.
Right. I love when cops and military say, I had no choice.
Yeah.
I have no choice.
I have no choice, yeah.
You're plugged in to an electrical outlet. Somebody's controlling you with a remote control. You have no choice.
You're a robot.
Yeah, okay. It's a bunk BS excuse that should never be accepted. You know who tried to make that statement? We had no choice. We were just following orders. They were called Nazis. Yep. Maybe you heard of them.
Yeah. How about
you read a couple of books? Yeah. You might have heard of them.
How about we take that break here, Mark?
Sure.
I got about a 5-minute break set up here, so I need to take that. Good. We take that nature break here. All right, everyone. Been a heck of a show so far, and I'm sure it's even going to get better. We'll be right back here in just a few minutes. All right, and welcome back, everyone. Just one short song there for the break. That's all I needed. I got the feeling that's all Mark needed too. And as that song says, sacrifice, my sacrifice. That's millions and millions and billions of people are going to have to sacrifice what they have now. They're virtually are probably 70% of the world's population that does sacrifice already. It's just the 25 to 30% of the so-called civilized people that are going to be the ones that are going to have to sacrifice and speak up, speak our minds up, tell this beast of a system no.
That's right.
Absolutely.
The lost word.
Lost word, no.
You know, and I often tell people the universe is spoken into existence. Unless we are willing to teach this to other people, don't expect it to magically change on its own. You know, that's what it really means to be a co-creator with the divine. You know, in all the creation epics of the world, the creator speaks the universe into existence. He says, let it be so, and then it is. We are made in that image and likeness, literally. It is true. And that means we have the power to create change here through the power of our voice. Don't underestimate that power. It is like the divine. I'm not telling anybody we're God or we're gods, okay? I'm saying if we step into the power of truth and use our voice to speak it, that is an unstoppable force. That is a divine force. Unfortunately, there's so few people doing that work, that great work, that it's laughable. You know, people want to spend all of their time and put all their attention on trivialities and things to pursue hedonistic pursuits and pleasures.
Well, I think there's two reasons for that, Mark. I think there's too many people that are just a little bit too comfortable.
Yeah.
They've got something to lose, and they see all around them every day. I think they see a lot of what we see. It's just that they're turning their head because they're just a little bit too comfortable, and they don't want to lose it. Like
my bank account might go down a few digits,
That's
you know?
Right. Yep.
So they're willing to live as a slave as long as they have money in the bank. I mean, imagine what kind of a person that is.
They're not coming after me, so why should I speak up, right?
And these are people who would consider themselves good too.
Yes.
That's the thing. They look right in the mirror and say, I'm a good human being. It's a total and utter lie. A total and utter lie, and somebody has to say it. We all need to say it. And this is the problem. Nobody says this because they're afraid to rock the boat. More so, they're afraid to rock the boat more with the people of their own family than they are with the state. You know? They'd rather maintain the comfort in those comfortable relationships. Well, you know what? You know what that comfort's going to get you more and more of? Slavery. I hope you enjoy it, folks. I hope you enjoy the comfort. You know, the wife who doesn't want to say anything to her husband, who just trounced all over somebody's natural rights doing their job as a cop or a soldier. Enjoy the comfort. Because you know what you're getting as a result of that comfort? The slavery of your children. That's what you're getting.
That's right.
So I hope you enjoy that. As a matter of fact, I hope they enjoy that.
That's right.
Because you'll have brought it to them. You'll have brought it to them.
Yeah, they're helping bring in a system that they're going to have to live in someday.
See, it all comes down to these two spiritual currencies I talk about that nobody wants to spend. Or they want to hoard them and just spend it on what I want. What I want. It's not about what's required. Again, I started off the whole interview talking about requirements. Require, meaning you have to have enough of this. There has to be a certain amount present. It is a requirement to create change. And the part of the big currency that we pay to create that change is how much time do we want to spend educating ourselves and others. The quality of our time. Spending time. See, we spend time. It's a monetary term, isn't it? Spending. We pay attention. What are we going to pay attention to? Paying. Another monetary term. Because that's what creates the real mon-I. Mon-E. The real money, not the fake stuff that's printed by the Federal Reserve on worthless pieces of paper. You know, the real one-I, which is what M-O-N-E-Y means in green language. Mon-I, one eye. That's the spiritual sight that you're going to get as a result of spending time and paying attention. You get money in return. You get the one eye, the spiritual insight, true spiritual vision, knowledge of truth, the light of the creator of the universe. That's what you get when you spend time to take truth into yourself, when you pay attention to what's really going on. Those are the real currencies.
Yes, it is.
And you become truly rich, not in fake money, but in the real thing when you spend those currencies wisely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what are we spending them on?
Yeah.
You know?
I want to get into a little bit of, well, just a very quick story of my awakening so much.
Sure.
As it's called. It was in 2009. I actually got my first computer for Christmas 2008. And in 2009, in the late winter, February, I enrolled into online college. And I started off in the IT, internet technology, but I soon realized I was way over my head because it ended up being computer programming, and I didn't want anything to do with that, so I switched into communications. And I was in communications class, and I was also in a critical thinking class. And I heard, of all people, Alex Jones down in Texas. And I heard him say, straw man attack. And that resonated. Sorry about that. That resonated to me because I knew what it was. And right then and there, my whole paradigm was blown apart because he happened to mention a YouTube clip, and I went and searched that clip out, and I saw right on the YouTube video that straw man attack was right there in front of me, and I knew what the practical applications of logical fallacies were in media. And every argument that I could go through my head just got blown away, you know. 9/11. I had my thoughts about JFK. I never really believed that story. But there was a lot of stories I did believe. And they all went away that day. What would it take to get people to realize what the media is doing to us?
Well, if they can't just see it by, looking into alternative information, I think that's part of the problem. People still aren't using the internet to seek alternative information. They're not informing themselves with the internet properly. A lot of the time, a lot of the reason for that is they don't really know how to effectively search the internet. They look at it as a huge sea of information that is unnavigable because there's so much on there. Then it's information overload, and then they say, well, I don't know who to believe because there's so many conflicting things. Also time is required. See, for discernment to develop in an individual, that takes time. That's not something that just happens overnight. For you to evolve discernment in your critical thinking so that you can come to an understanding of what's true and what's not true. That's a process. It's not an event that just suddenly occurs. It's a process that it's like lifting weights. You don't get a muscular body overnight. You have to lift weights for often years to rebuild, the musculature of your body, especially if it's been atrophied by ill use or not being used.
Inactivity, yeah.
Right.
Do you think cognitive dissonance has a great effect on just the masses, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this is like the epitome of the diseased mental condition of humanity. Cognitive dissonance is one of the worst. If you have someone that's in severe mental illness, if they're in deep cognitive dissonance, because what that is it goes beyond just a psychological illness. That's how it's categorized by modern psychologists, but it's beyond that. Cognitive dissonance is the state of you can, with your own eyes, you can see that this is how something is. And yet mentally, you go through these mental gymnastics and you say, oh, no, it isn't that way. And I refuse to acknowledge that it is that way. I am going to continue to believe that it is this other way.
Yeah.
Okay? So what you're really doing in a state of cognitive dissonance, which is why I see this as one of the, it's beyond the symptom and it's beyond just a mental disease. It is what I would call one of the ultimate forms of rebellion against all of creation, cognitive dissonance. You've let yourself get so destroyed. You've let your soul get so destroyed when you're in a deep state of cognitive dissonance that what the being that's in that state is really saying is, I am the arbiter of truth. That's how much they have lost their bearings on reality. That's how much they've lost their bearings, their anchoring, their moors to the real world. Yeah. They're saying that they're God in a nutshell.
Exactly.
A person in deep cognitive dissonance is saying, I'm God. I get to make up the difference between truth and falsehood.
Yes, exactly.
I get to make up what actually occurred and what actually did not occur because
Sure.
I'm God.
Sure.
I'm the arbiter of truth.
I think a lot of people suffer from not having any empathy also. They just can't seem to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. I was able to, from a very early age, I think maybe 7 or 8, I would always hear my mother, don't do that to your neighbor, or, well, it was especially my younger brother. She would always say, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and how would you feel if they did that to you? And I was able to. So I think that made my moral compass, actually, from a very early age.
I think that simple exercise of contemplation, because that's what it is. It's not an act of meditation nor an act of concentration. That's a contemplative exercise. This is one of the things that they emphasized and taught deeply in a lot of ancient mystery school traditions, was the practice of contemplation. And that is visualization. Visualize yourself in that scenario. This is what people seem to be incapable of doing. It's a lost modality of human brain function, of cognitive function in general, is to be able to envision that you're in a situation that's different than the one that you're actually in. That you place yourself visually in another person's situation, or you imagine things being different, and then what you would have to do to create that condition, etc. Visualization exercises such as that. We're not taught to do this in school, and that's part of the problem, is that people can't envision other people's possible mind states, or, again, what they may be experiencing. In a good sense, this practice will help you to develop empathy, as you said. But not having the ability to do it, it's really having an effect in the sense that also people can't put themselves in the position of a psychopath, of a person who doesn't care. That sounds like, oh, isn't that a good thing? No, that's a bad thing not to be able to do that. Because here's the logical fallacy that follows not being able to do that. You think, and I've heard people make this statement right to my face when I tell them about things that are deliberately being done. Like we could talk about the season of sacrifice, how, to follow that great bumper music during the break. We could talk about the occult season of sacrifice. You try to tell people this season, this 40-day period that we're in right now, from around the spring equinox, really it's like 3 days after the spring equinox, to the midpoint of spring, is a 40-day time period. That 40-day time period from around March 22nd to May 1st is what dark occultists refer to as the season of sacrifice. This is when they do bloodletting rituals. This goes back to ancient solar cult religion, when they thought that they had to perform a blood sacrifice to appease the sun god and the earth goddess, so that crops would grow in abundance, so that they'd have a good harvest, which would enable their population to ride out the winter. This is planting season, folks. That's when the sacrifice would be offered, at the first couple of weeks into spring, up to through the midpoint of spring. That's when you plant. So that's when the sacrifice would be made. This is still going on today. I mean, the Fort Hood shooting, the stabbings in Pennsylvania.
Waco,
you think
Texas.
These are just disconnected random events? Always the mass slaying of children during this 40-day period.
Sure. Waco,
You
Texas.
can look up all these school shootings. Tons of events have taken place during this time period. And people are just now starting to recognize the pattern. Yeah. Just starting a little bit. I get a couple of emails here and there, people saying, yes, Thank you for exposing this. I'm recognizing it. I'm seeing that it's happening exactly during the time period you said it would.
Is that
I'm making it up, folks, because this is what I want the world to be. How crazy would I have to be to make this crap up? You know, you can't make this up, the level of sickness and evil that we're in. I don't want the world to be like this. I'm just telling you how it actually is. That's all I'm charged to do. That's my job. My job is to say, folks, you might want to wake up and pay attention, because here's what the world actually is that you're living in. You want it to get worse? Well, do nothing about it. You want it to get better? There's requirements. There are requirements.
Hey, Mark,
so start paying attention and learning what those requirements are.
Somebody wanted to know if peaches was a sacrifice.
I'm not familiar with peaches.
Geldof. I wasn't either.
You have to explain. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, this is over in Ireland, so I'm not totally positive either. Bob Geldof, I think. Jeez, let me try to think. I know that. Well, I don't know, but I suspect, and I've heard that there was a sacrifice. And at a Rolling Stones concert, a guy got ritualistically stabbed by a biker. Bob Geldof's daughter, 25 years old. Huh. Did this just happen recently? Yesterday, I guess. Oh. I hadn't even heard of this. Bob Geldof's daughter.
Yeah, this is the first I'm hearing about it. That's why I haven't really looked at it or considered it. I wouldn't rule it out as a possible sacrifice. That happens in high-level entertainment for certain.
Yeah.
They like to target celebrities for things like this.
I
wouldn't rule it out, but I don't want to just say I know anything about it, because again, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, the way I hear it, Mark, it is like one of the biggest honors bestowed on somebody that is high up in the system to sacrifice one of their young.
Oh God! I mean, I don't know that that's the case, but if people look at it like that, they're sicker than even I think.
Yeah.
You know. But this is taking place. It does go on, and we need to step up and look at the pattern. You know, and where I was getting to with this is what the ultimate form of cognitive dissonance really is people who look at people who do things like this and say, oh, they wouldn't do that, or they couldn't do something like that. See, where the big logical fallacy comes in is not only in thinking that there's nobody out there that couldn't do anything like that. It's attempting to ascribe your own moral sensibilities and your own moral judgment and decision making, and to graft that onto someone else, to ascribe that to someone else. That's a fatal, fatal, fatal mistake to make. You know, that's like you saying everybody is at the same level of morality as me. You know?
Yeah.
Well, who would make that statement?
Right.
And believe it, and actually believe it to be true? I mean, you have to be a naive child to believe that. That's like a child who doesn't want to believe there's bad people in the world.
Sure.
Oh, no one would ever do anything like that, because I would never do anything like that.
I would never do anything, yeah.
Guess what? There's plenty of people who would do something like that. They're sick. They're twisted. They're evil. They're evil people in this world.
I guess his daughter let a tweet out naming two mothers who let rock stars screw their children, have sex with their children. She let out a tweet. And I don't know if that has something to do with their web, but that sounds like that's right up there. I mean,
it's reminiscent of like the sex crimes that go on within, you know, the church, and then these priests and cardinals have just you know, paid families off not to press charges against these priests doing these horrific acts of sexual molestation on children, and then they move them right into a different. They pay the parent off not to press charges. And then, you know, they keep quiet about what went on. If they agree to get the priest out of that parish, then they move him to a different community and let it start all over again. You know? That's what the former pope was one of the key people in charge of that operation.
The last two, from what I hear, yeah.
Benedict and, you know, what was his name? Ratzinger.
Yeah.
Joseph Ratzinger. Yeah, Benedict. He was in charge of that whole op within the Catholic Church. Yeah, I mean, people will say, oh, they would never do anything like that. No, okay, sure. Keep believing that with the amount of money that's involved.
That's right.
You know, you had enough money, most people, their morals go right out the window. You know, they'll just do anything. They would stab their own mother right in the throat.
And they sleep like babies doing it, too.
Because that's their God. I mean, what we have to understand is there's really only two gods that people are serving. They're either serving the true God of creation, which is the God of moral law, the God of moral law, the difference between right and wrong, okay, that gifted us with free will, put the boundary conditions called natural law into creation for our uplift and our evolutionary development. Or you're serving the god money. That's it. And that's the entropic force. That's the force of enslavement.
Absolutely.
You want to call that Satan? What force could you possibly think of has divided people more than money throughout the history of human civilization? And that's what the word Satan means. The divider, the opposer, the adversary, the one who divides, the one who splits apart, the one who tears up, breaks down. It's the entropic force.
Yeah.
It's the force of involution. Yeah. And that God is what people worship. They worship the God of chaos and involution, which is money.
Well,
that's their God.
I've heard it characterized, Mark, as their God is gold, oil, and drugs.
Sure.
But anyways, I should
absolutely. That's a great way to look at it.
Characterize it. Yeah. Actually, one of the first things I should have done, but I guess we could probably get into it now. I know a little bit about your past and your history, but would you like to explain to people what happened to you when you were young?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to tell people I got a little peek under the curtain to the backstage area. They opened up the backstage door, and I took a little peek in, and I said, nope, not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. In a nutshell. I got involved in dark occultism when I was younger. For about 10 years of my life. Spent some time in satanic organizations and, with connections, direct connections to organizations like the Church of Satan. Some ancillary and indirect connections to the Temple of Set. Some other smaller, lower level, more unknown groups. Church of Lucifer. Whitehall Church of Satan. Order of the Evil Eye. And this was a result of me not having knowledge about what religion was all about in my youth. Grew up in a typical Roman Catholic, South Philadelphia, Italian, American family. My family's completely unconscious, remains so to this day, with the exception of like maybe one or two half-conscious individuals that are awake to what's going on and just don't take much action. So therefore, they're not really fully awake. They're awake to the symptoms. They're not doing the great work, not to a large extent anyway. They might be, briefly talking to a few people here and there. That's maybe the very beginning of it, but they're not fully engaged. So my family was probably even much worse in their unconsciousness in my youth than even they are today, because I'm sure at least a few of them can start seeing the problems. I mean, if you can't start seeing the problems with what's going on today, I don't know if you'll ever will. But, these were the type of people who they didn't question anything at all. And like I said, still don't to a large extent. They just taught their religion to other people, to those who come after them, just like was taught to them. Don't question things, just accept. This is how we were taught, so this is what we accept, and this is what we teach to our young. That's it. And I bought into all the indoctrination when I was young. I can't tell anybody, hey, I was awake from birth, I was some conscious small child. No. I was indoctrinated like everybody else.
Yes, I was too, yeah.
I bought into all that religious indoctrination until I started reaching the age of reason and questioning. And logically beginning to start thinking for myself. I think one of the big things that really, I don't usually tell this when I'm relating this account of what got me involved in dark occultism, but I think one of the things that really helped my thinking as a child is a first grade teacher, my first grade teacher, said that she recognized extreme boredom with me when I was in class in first grade. And it seemed like I was way ahead of the other children in the class. And Just like I didn't want to be there because it was like you're making me pay attention to this stuff that I already know, you know, like
Yeah.
where they were struggling with a lot of things. It was just like it came so natural to me, and I was moving ahead in the material on my own, and you know, finishing the book before they had even gone through the second chapter. And then I was bored, you know. I learned at a different pace from other children. I could take it in and keep going and want more. I still am like that to a large extent, but it was definitely how I was when I was a child. And she recommended me for an advanced, like kind of an advanced placement program here in Pennsylvania that was called Program for Mentally Gifted Children, for children with mental giftedness, like that, you know, a mental state that was beyond their age, their current physical age, and they could take some like advanced placement type learning materials and courses at a secondary location. So from first grade on, I was in like an advanced placement program 1 day a week where I didn't attend my regular school, my regular Catholic school in my grade school years, and I went into a program here in Pennsylvania that taught actual critical thinking skills really well, actually. I mean, they were teaching trivium methodology, not calling it that, but they were teaching those same skill sets that are taught in the ancient trivium. And I think that really is what started me on the path to being able to see through things and question things deeply. And when I started doing that about religion, there were no answers coming. Certainly not from my teachers and certainly not from my family members. So that started turning into, when I saw the inherent contradictions and logical inconsistencies and logical fallacies involved in the religious indoctrination I had been given, that started turning into anger in me. You know, there was no frame of reference and knowledge, unfortunately, by that point in time in my life. You know, I didn't know about astrotheology. I didn't have any comparative religious studies going on. I didn't know about, you know, the history of religion, you know, didn't know about any of those things. So I couldn't see religion in a framework or in a context, or certainly not in an astrotheological context as I understand it now. Had I had that prerequisite knowledge, it wouldn't have went the direction it went. But as they say, you know, perhaps things happen for a reason. So all that rage in my late grade school years, moving into early high school years, led to me seeking out the antithesis of traditional cultural religion and religious belief systems. And that came to me in the form of dark occultism, specifically the satanic ideology, which again is, I'll just briefly outline its tenets. It's not what people think it is. Satanism is absolute service to self above all else, first and foremost. It is the religion of me. I'm God. All that matters is what I want. That's the first tenet, okay? It is service to self ideology placed at the pedestal, at the apex of everything. That's first tenet. Second tenet, moral relativism, meaning there's no such thing as objective right and wrong. Right and wrong are just judgment decisions that human beings get to make up. What's right for us is what's right. What's wrong for us is what's wrong. There's no absolute system of moral values based in nature, based in actual behavior. It's, if this benefits me, do it at the expense of someone else. That's okay. That's okay. That's what's good for me. Therefore, that's my judgment about what's moral. And that's how morality should be determined. What's good for me. Because again, since I'm God in this religion, and my, comfort comes above all else, even if I have to step on people to get there. Of course, what's right is what's right for me. That's called moral relativism. That's where our society is at, in a nutshell, largely. The third and fourth tenets are social Darwinism and eugenics. And again, these grow out of macrobiological Darwinian theory, which is not proven to be true in the fossil record, although scientism followers accept it as dogma. They accept it as their religious belief system, the whole Darwinian paradigm. Okay, even though there's not one fossil in the fossil record to support that theory, and Darwin himself would have told people, my theory would have to be borne out by many transitional species within the fossil record, not even just one. and telling people that it would have to be entertained only as a theory until this was born in the fossil record, until it was borne out in the fossil record, which never has been done. Specifically, not in human beings, certainly. That we evolved from primitive hominid ancestors to become modern Homo sapiens sapiens. There's not one bone shared between those two types of beings. Not a bone, not one fossil, ever discovered, let alone the whole missing link, not one bone, okay? But they would have us believe it's, it's a nice, neat, wrapped up package with a bow on it, when nothing could be further from the truth. The reason I even bring this up is this is what leads into social Darwinism. When we accept macrobiological Darwinian theory as the be-all and end-all of scientific, say-so about how we became and what we are today, then that leads into, well, since Darwinism is the survival of the so-called fittest and, natural selection choosing between that fittest and those who are unfit or not as, so-called evolved, then the most vicious and ruthless that is willing to take the reins and rule over others, that they should be in that position somehow. The most psychopathic among us are the ones that nature has selected for evolutionary progression to propagate their genes. I mean, imagine this mindset. And I'm telling you, there's people out there that are in the so-called truth and freedom movement who believe this nonsense, that these are somehow the select chosen people, that they got their genes to that point by their ruthlessness, and therefore they should continue, and the people who aren't willing to be that ruthless should be the one who go by the wayside. Imagine this.
Hi, Harry.
Hey, what's up, Steve?
What's going on? I'm in a show.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were on air live.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I got Mark Passio. You can say hi to Mark if you want.
Hey.
Hey, hi. How you doing, Mark? That's awesome. Well. I just had a video of yours streaming on the network about, I don't remember what it was about. It must have been something you uploaded recently where you were talking about property rights and all that. But yes. I don't want to interrupt you guys too much, but great work, Mark. I'll talk to you another time.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's the underlying foundational basis for natural law is understanding property. I mean, I know we're not going to have time to get into that on this broadcast. We could do it in a future show, perhaps. But it underlies the foundation of natural law, most certainly. But to go back to this little recounting of my background, again, Satan.
Well, let me bow out, guys. Sure. So okay, I'll talk to you another time. Take care.
All right.
This ideology called Satanism isn't what people believe it is. That's propagated through Hollywood. Okay, it's service to self above all else. Okay, moral relativism, social Darwinism, and eugenics. They're the four overarching tenets of this religion. Eugenics is, since we're God, we get to decide who lives and who dies. In a nutshell, that's what eugenics really means. We're going to decide who gets to propagate and breed and who does not. So as I became involved in Satanism and dark occultism in general, and I started espousing satanic ideology, I was doing this through writing and music. I had bands back then, and I incorporated this into the lyrics of our songs. Then I wrote in fanzines and little magazines and, put out articles on the satanic ideology. And some of my work was eventually recognized by the high priest of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey. And this is like a front organization. It's not nowhere near high level in the satanic hierarchy. It's a front to interface with the public so that they can pull people with certain talents and characteristics that they're seeking to advance their agenda from the public, interface with the public at that level, and then slowly groom them up into the hierarchy. LaVey appointed me priest in his organization, wanted me to start a grotto here in Philadelphia. That's what they call their covens, grottos. And I would not accept that because I didn't look at Satanism as a kind of a collectivist thing where I wanted to get involved with a whole lot of people. Certainly not something I wanted to be in charge of. It was kind of a personal practice to me. But I did take up, not through LaVey, but through other Satanists in this area, invitations to become involved in other grottos that were already operating in this vicinity. In the tri-state area around Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. Maybe one or two occasionally in New Jersey, but not very frequently. Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware mostly. And when I got involved, I realized that, and my involvement grew a little bit, and I saw how these were interconnected networks of societies of people with the same essential mindset and worldview. I became aware that these weren't isolated groups of individuals just working with some hidden knowledge for personal reasons. They were tight-knit groups of people that were comprised of an eclectic variety of people in all positions of power in every single social institution and walk of life in our society, from law to military to banking, politics, media, law enforcement, entertainment, technology, education, you name it, medicine, everything. There were Satanists involved at high-level positions of power in every one of those institutions. And they weren't just working, to advance their own individual power. They were working together, and they were working toward a common goal, and that goal was we're going to increase our own collective power at the expense of everybody else's rights and freedoms through mind control, through our knowledge of the occult, of how the psyche works, and how the laws of nature work. We're going to advance our power. We're going to become gods here that are unchallenged. Okay, we're going to overturn natural law and dump it on its head. And we're going to rule a hell. We're going to rule a prison. Instead of serve in heaven, we're going to reign in hell. That was their ideology. When I became aware I was involved at a low level, admittedly low level, of a compartmentalized and hierarchically organized network of interlocking structures and societies like this, my conscience would not allow me to continue with involvement. I still had a conscience, to an extent, back then. And when I said I wanted to get out, there was no trepidation, no hesitation. It's like, there's the door, and don't let it hit you on the ass on the way out, boy.
Yeah.
You think we need you? We don't need a thing from you.
That's right.
We were going to let you backstage. Now, you're out there with the cattle. You're out there with the golems. You're out there with the minions, with the dead.
Yeah.
So as soon as I said I didn't want to be involved, it was as if I never existed to those individuals. Never existed.
Yeah.
I wasn't involved at any high level, that's why.
Yeah.
Once you're involved at a higher level, I would expect that then there's going to be more resistance in your departure, especially if you know where bodies are buried.
Yeah.
Or
you would have been taken out yourself.
Right.
I just want to tell you, Mark, I don't really have a set time for this show. If you want to continue on more, that's totally your prerogative.
Well, I'll tell you, I think, now's probably a good place to wrap it up. I've given people something to chew on and given people a little bit about my background. We could pick it up in another interview at some future point. I think that gives people enough. I tried to keep it as tempered as possible. I know I got a little bit heated there in the midsection when we were talking about dominators and order followers. That always raises my ire. There's an abundance of information that people can look into regarding my work. If you go to whatonearthishappening.com, whatonearthishappening.com, that's my website. Yeah. You can check out the audio podcasts there. I always tell people the same thing. Listen to them all in order, starting from number one. Go to the podcast page, the tab on my website. Go back to number one. There's 3 pages or 4 pages of podcast, I think 3. You go back to number one. Listen forward in order from the beginning. They're logically structured a specific way for a reason. It's not just random. I'm not just talking about random things. I structured them very meticulously, in order, for a reason. You listen to them in order, the whole tapestry will start to come together and make sense. And then you'll be wanting more information. Okay? That's my recommendation to people if you really want to get a real in-depth idea of what's going on here on Earth. You could also check out the videos, and I highly, highly recommend for people, even if you want to do this before you start the podcast, listen to the Natural Law Seminar. Watch the Natural Law Seminar, the first 3 videos in the video section of my website. That's a primer for all of my work, and it's the ultimate of all my work. It's the beginning and the end. It's the beginning and the end of everything. It's all anybody needs to know. Really, is what's in those 3 videos. But my podcast will paint the complete picture. That's where you want to go for the tapestry of information to change the totality of the worldview that's holding us back. You would check out the podcast. And I point out a lot of other researchers, a lot of other books, a lot of other resources. It's not just me. This isn't my information, folks. We're people who are putting this information forward now and the way they're doing it today, we're standing upon the shoulders of giants. We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for pioneers that came before us. So, we always have to, give the nod to those people and, raise our glass to them and, nod our cap to them, because without them, this information wouldn't have come down to us. And we wouldn't be able to understand it with the depth and the clarity that we do today, and then teach it to others, with a refinement, a process of refinement, and a greater clarifying and purifying of it. So all that information is there on my site. I mean, it's a huge body of knowledge. Just take it at your own pace. Take the podcast in order at your own pace. That's all. It's an investment of time? Yes, it is. Is it an investment of attention? Yes, it is. What will you get on the other side? Spiritual gold. Spiritual gold. So, Stephen, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to come on your show and provide the great platform to share this information with people, and hopefully they'll take the ball and run with it and move forward on their own and progress and learn this information, then teach it to others, because that's what the great work is all about. And I thank you for what you're doing with your show to put information out there to the masses of people and help to change things here in this world for the better.
Well, you're very welcome, and I appreciate you coming on. And I tell people all the time, it's not about me, and it's not about my information. And I'm sure you would probably think also that it's not really about you, and it's not about your information. It's about getting out there and doing something about the information.
It's about the truth and acting upon it. Yes. That's all it's about. Like I said, all I consider myself is, am I someone who woke up? Yes. Am I someone who remembered my mission here, what I came here to do? Yes. It's just some people recognize that and awaken to that more than others. That's all. Doesn't make me anybody superhuman or super special. Not the first, won't be the last.
Not at all.
And this is the same task that lies for everybody. My mission's no different than your mission, no different than their mission. We all came here to do the same thing, folks. We came here to free our planet, to free the beings on this planet. That's what we came here to do. This isn't a perpetual hell. It's a hell of our own making. That's all a choice. It's all a choice. We came here to change ourselves, change our minds, and then change the human condition. We came here to end slavery on planet Earth. And that's what we are going to do.
Yeah, we don't really have a choice, do we, Mark?
No. No, not if there's going to be any significant positive future for humanity. No, we do not.
Not at all.
So, get to work, folks.
Yes.
And
Pass
Steve,
the
thanks
information
again.
along. Yes, thank you very much, Mark. And everyone, I'm just going to sign off here, and then talk to Mark for about 2 more minutes maybe, and then I will let the stream go, or I will put another pod on or something, one or the other, because I'm the last broadcaster of the night, Mark. So, all right, everyone, thank you for coming out, and thanks for staying on. Yes, it absolutely was a great show, and I had a heck of a time trying to keep up with the chat room. So, good night, everyone, till Friday night. I'm Stephen Roberts. This is Cancel The Cabal.